Prithvi Shantirantarikshagam Shantir Dyaus Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gaushanti Shantirashva Shanti Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shanti Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Sarvastaratu durgani sarvo bhadrani pashyatu. Sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the Divine Presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asato ma Satkamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravir Maheti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. We are seeing those set of verses in chapter 13 where the qualities that a devotee of God has are described. And as I said last time, that the characteristics of these great devotees or the enlightened ones become the disciplines to be practiced by the unenlightened. So we are seeing this set of verses which describe the different qualities that we as devotees must try to inculcate in our own lives. We began with verse 13. Let me read those two verses again and then we will continue the discussion. Let's chant them together. Adveshta sarvabhutanam Maitrav karuna evacha Nirmamo nirahankaraha Samadukha sukhakshami Santushtas satatam yogi Yatatma dridhanishchayaha Mayyarpitamano buddhihi Yo mad bhaktas same priyaha. Non-envious, friendly and compassionate towards all beings, free from ideas of possession and ego consciousness, sympathetic in pain and pleasure, forgiving, always contented, contemplative, self-controlled, of firm conviction with his mind and intellect dedicated to me, such a devotee of mine is dear to me. The part of verse 13 we saw last time. Adveshta, one who doesn't hate anyone, one who is not envious of anyone. Sarvabhutana maitraha, friendly towards all. And karunaha, compassionate, understanding towards others. And we saw that these are the three typical reactions that sometimes people have. That those who are somehow higher or superior to us, we feel oftentimes envious of them or jealous of them. And so we have to stop that being jealous or being envious. So that's why he said non-envious. Similarly, with those who are our contemporaries, our equals, we must be friendly towards them. And then those who are below us in some ways, whether in position, power, talent, or whatever you call it, against such people, rather than being patronizing, we have to be compassionate, understanding toward them. And that these are the two adjectives that we discussed in quite detail last time about nirmamaha, nirahankaraha, the two primary ways in which the ego manifests, I and mine. So nirahankaraha, ahankara means aham is I, ahankaraha the I-ness, and nirahankaraha means no I-ness. In other words, in every situation, I need to put the other person first, not myself. One thing you will have noticed, if you are looking at a group picture in which you are present, and when that photograph is in front of you, who do you look at first? And almost invariably, if you are present in the picture, you will first look at yourself. So somehow this seems very inbuilt in us, that we always put the I before you. And so nirahankara means the I, even if it has not disappeared altogether, it's not always prioritized. There are situations in life in which this I does go back for a while. And for instance, now sometime when you see in an emergency, when a person needs help, and that time most of us would want to go and help the person. If it's possible for us to help that person. At that moment, I don't think very few at that moment will be thinking, what can I get out of this? I think most of us in such situations, out of compassion, out of a sense of duty, we go and help, and it's not like we are thinking about the I all the time. But in many situations in life, we need to ask how many of our decisions, our actions are truly helpless, not helpless, are truly selfless. Yeah, that's something worth considering. So I, ahankaraha, nirmamaha means mine. Again, there are so many things in life I see as mine. This applies not only to material objects, but also to people. Pets, my dog, my family, my friends. Now that's fine. There's nothing wrong in seeing these things as mine. But we also need to recognize every time I have a sense of mine, it comes along with the sense of not mine. If these are my friends, then other than these are not mine. And that's becomes the seed of a problem. If not a present problem, a future problem. I mean, look about it in this way. The problems of immigration. Currently, the refugees that are flooding many European countries from Syria and other places. It's a major problem. I mean, there are some real, genuine concerns there. But at the foundation of these concerns is the fact that these people who are coming, they are not ours. So if these people within my country, if I say that these are our people, and then those who are now coming are not ours, the very fact that the ours and not ours distinction is created, it at least potentially creates a problem. And then you have to decide, well, what should we do with those people who are not ours? That is why there is one very ancient Sanskrit verse which goes like this. Ayam nijaha paro va iti ganana laghu chetasam udara charitanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam. Very simple. Ayam nijaha, this is mine. Paro va, that's not mine. When we begin to make this distinction, what kind of mind makes such a distinction? Iti ganana, this kind of calculation, laghu chetasam, laghu means small, chetasa is mind. So small-minded people make this distinction that this is mine, that is not mine, that is a foreigner, this is mine. Udara charitanam tu, one whose heart is completely opened up, one who is truly heart and mind is open. Vasudhaiva kutumbakam. Vasudha means this whole earth, the whole planet. Kutumbakam means family. So one whose heart has opened up, the entire world becomes their family. And we are reminded of the saying of Holy Mother Sharda Devi. She said that, learn to make the whole world your own. No one is a stranger, my child. Learn to make the whole world your own. That's very profound. That doesn't mean that we have to be indiscriminating. By that I mean, the world is your own doesn't mean you indiscriminately just get strangers, invite them to your home and allow them to do what they want. That's foolishness. Because sure, no one is a stranger in that sense, but on the other hand, Sri Ramakrishna says that God is present in everyone, but God is present even in lion and tiger as well. You don't go and hug a lion and tiger because, well, if God is present, that God is best admired with the when the lions and tigers are behind a cage or behind some barrier. So we have to take the precautions necessary so that no one is hurt, either ourselves or somebody else. Keeping those precautions in mind, as far as our thinking is concerned, we should recognize that in reality, the whole world is one soul. Now, all these things, we may be far away from this ideal right now. We do have a sense of I and mine in a very strong way. But we must recognize that this is the ideal towards which we have to move. And one way of developing this is the more I connect my I with God or with my spiritual ideal, the easier it becomes to not allow my own existence to be trapped within this I and mine. And that's why cultivating a ripe ego, like I'm a devotee of God, is a better ego than I'm a very wealthy person, I'm a very great person, I'm a great scholar. Now, that's also an ego. But the ego that I'm a child of God is somehow more easy to transcend than these other egos. Sama dukkha sukhaha. How can we see sukha and dukkha, joy and sorrow, same? Now we will see that our lives are just a collection of sukha and dukkha. There are things in life which have brought us happiness, which is continuing to bring happiness and which will bring happiness in the future. And there are things in life which have brought us much pain and sorrow in the past. Some of it is bringing pain and sorrow right now, and some of it will continue to bring pain and sorrow in the future. So our lives, we will find, we kind of go back and forth. It's just a continuous play of joy and sorrow, sukha and dukkha. And they are at present not same to us. Obviously, we want to be happy, we don't want to be miserable. So happiness and misery are not really same. In what way are they same? The only way they can become, if we want to look at some commonality between joy and sorrow, it's possible to see it only from a spiritual standpoint. And that is, to a devotee of God, the primary focus is God or the spiritual ideal. And we will see that both joy and sorrow make us forget the ideal. Because when things are wonderful, most of us don't think of God when everything is fine. God becomes only a kind of a 911. When in trouble, try everything, and I'll also pray, because then it's kind of a backup. But when things are fine, we really don't feel first of all, it's not that we don't want God, but oftentimes we don't even feel the need for God. We don't even remember God when things are well. And sometimes, when everything is going fine, God can be a problem, really. God can make you feel guilty. It's like you are at a party and really having a whale of a time. And then you suddenly remember, oh, but what about my meditation? Or I've got to do this Gita class today. And then you kind of feel a little guilty. You said, oh, I missed my meditation today. Now then if you hadn't thought of God at all, then you wouldn't have had this pain. So sometimes thinking about your spiritual life when things are really good sometimes can dilute that happiness a little bit in some cases. And when things are really bad, those who have some religious or spiritual background may think about praying. But for most people, either they don't think of God at all when they are in pain, or if they think of God, it's always not with great love. It's often like, why did God allow this to happen to me? God doesn't love me. God hates me. Or at the extreme case, there is no God. So we can find a range of reactions when we are happy and when we are miserable. What is common to them is many of these reactions have a tendency. It doesn't happen always, but a lot of times, both these things have a tendency to make us forget God. And that is why we need to find that is the commonality between them. As students of Vedanta and up to the insights that we have studied in the Gita up to this point, we know one thing, that both joy or sorrow, both can be experienced only through a body and mind. In other words, joy and sorrow is possible only when the body and mind are present. Is there some time in our experience when our body and mind are not present? And yes, actually, when we are fast asleep, when you are not even, when we are awake, we are aware of both our body and mind, both are functional and we are aware of both of them. When we go to sleep, by definition, the sleep means we are not aware of our body anymore. And that's what we find. When you go to sleep, you switch off the light, for some time you're turning and twisting in your bed, you're still aware of the body, you also feel like, oh, I'm not able to get sleep, it's too hot or too cold, and then at some point, suddenly everything goes away. So you don't feel anything. So the awareness of the body disappears. But the mind is still active. It's that active mind in a sleeping body that makes dreams possible. But every night when we sleep, there is a short period, sometimes only for a few minutes, when even the mind disappears from our consciousness. When the mind also, there is no activity. And that's the state of deep sleep. Sanskrit is called sushupti. So in that state of deep sleep, there is no joy, there is no sorrow. In order for joy and sorrow to be experienced, you need either the mind or the body or both. So this devotee of God, who has completely surrendered their body and mind at the feet of God, they don't have this sense of I or mine attached to the body and mind, and that is why joy and sorrow become equal to them. In other words, joy and sorrow does not overwhelm them. It doesn't mean that they never become happy or miserable. That's important to remember. A devotee of God is not like a wall. A wall never becomes sukhi or dukhi, doesn't become happy or miserable. But it doesn't mean that when you are a devotee of God, you will be just with a straight face. Nothing will make you happy, nothing will make you miserable. That's not true. That's not true. We've seen that in great saints. They're so much filled with joy all the time. And oftentimes you also see them weeping, shedding tears. We see the people when they would go to Holy Mother with some pain, and oftentimes Mother sat and wept with them. So they have the capacity to feel that pain, feel that sorrow. But oftentimes that sorrow or that pain is not for their own sake. That is why, so sometimes we speak about people who are very compassionate. They say this person has a very soft heart, and in many Indian languages, the simile that is given to a heart which is soft is like butter, like it's as soft as butter, because just as butter melts with heat, so the heart of a saint, the heart of a devotee melts seeing the pain and misery. What Tulsidas says in his book was that while our heart melts at our own pain and sorrow, but the hearts of the saints, it's not that their sorrow that they are weeping for. Their heart melts looking at the sorrow of others. So it's of a much finer, much deeper sensitivity that they have. So that's the way to understand how joy and sorrow are in some ways equal, because they both take us away from our own self. Kshami, forgiving. This is a very important quality. Forgiveness. Sometimes we find forgiveness very difficult. Sometimes we might have heard people saying, forgive but don't forget. And that's a big subject. But when we speak about forgiveness, who are we really forgiving? Let's say someone has done me some harm, and I find it difficult to forgive that person. Who is really suffering here? The person who has done me harm has done the harm, and that person doesn't even care whether I forgive that person. It's not like that person is coming and begging to me, please forgive me. Let's say that person is not even repentant, and I find it difficult to forgive that person. Now, who is suffering? It's I who is suffering. I am suffering because I cannot forget that such injustice was done to me, that this person did such harm to me. And I am saying, I won't forgive that person, but the end result of that is that I am the one who is suffering. And so it's not really about forgiving the other person. It's more about forgiving oneself. Because if I think that by not forgiving that person, I'm somehow, it's like a payback time. This person brought me so much pain. By not forgiving, I'm bringing pain to that person. That mission has failed because I'm the one who's suffering. That person is not. So really, first of all, first thing to remember is often when you forgive someone, you're not doing so much a favor to them, you're doing a favor to yourself. Because once you forgive, your heart is at peace. There is one saying of Mark Twain. Mark Twain once said, always forgive your enemies. There's nothing that irritates them more than that. You can see, you can try it out. Try it out sometime, even in some small matters. If you're having an argument with a friend, let's say, or there's something, and rather than try to prove your point, rather than try to prove you're right, you can just say, okay, I forgive you. That will irritate them more. So you can really have your revenge both ways. You can give forgiveness, keep your mind at peace, and also make the other person miserable if you want. But that's a Mark Twain's way of putting it, and there's a lot of truth in that. But what is important to remember is forgiveness is really a forgiving oneself. It's really bringing peace to oneself. And that's why, rather than holding a grudge in our heart and carrying that hatred or anger, it takes away our own peace of mind. And sometimes this grudge or anger or peace can be inherited. It can go from one generation to the next. They sometimes say that once there was an argument between Shiva and Rama. They disagreed with something and they just had an argument. And afterward they just forgot about it and they became friends again. But their followers, so the Shiva's followers and Rama's, these monkeys who were his followers, the Vanar Sena and the Shiva's followers, they were fighting for generations together afterwards, thinking, oh, yet your boss, they didn't use the word boss, they did it to our this thing. So sometimes it can happen this way. And you can see that sometimes, even in family situations. Oh, your father or your mother did that said this to my father or mother. Sometimes families can have this bad blood between them, which is carried over from generation to the next. Sometimes it could last for decades. It could be carried over from centuries. In fact, if you see the rather sad and tragic history of what's the Middle East, the desire to bring peace, the more we remain stuck in the past, the demons of the past will not allow us to live in the present. Clearly the problem is complex. It's not like it's so simple as that. But even then, I think that if people, let's take some specific example. The enmities and the clashes in the Middle East, for instance. Even if not all, but I think if majority of the people there involved into that conflict began to think more about the future, that both the sides who are now at war and killing each other, for all we know, they might be good parents to their children. Both people on both sides of the conflict love their children. They want their children to be happy, but their children cannot have a peaceful future if these people are fighting and killing each other and bombing each other. So if they say, well, we want our children to grow up in a peaceful, happy society, let's think about that. That would provide at least a greater incentive to sit down and talk and find some way out rather than just go and kill and bomb. As I said, the problem is complex. It's not easy to just sit here and give a solution like that. But at least we can try a different way, and perhaps a solution might emerge from that way of thinking, rather than being caught up in these demons of the past. And so kshami, forgiving, is an important quality for a devotee. Santushtaha, always contented. Now, contentment is another important quality for a devotee of God. How can we be content when things are not really perfect? I feel that things don't have to be perfect. In fact, if we seek perfection in this world, we are really looking for it in the wrong place. Swami Vivekananda referred to the world as lost equilibrium. That a perfect world would not be this world at all. What we can do is try our best to make it as perfect as we can. We may not succeed, but if we make that effort in a selfless way, we make that effort in an honest way, then we will become perfect. The world may not become perfect, but we will become perfect. If this world has been around now for such a long time, if it was to become perfect, it probably would have become perfect already. Considering that it hasn't become perfect now after millions of years, I don't feel too hopeful that it's going to be perfect in the next 4 or 10 or during my lifetime or during anybody's lifetime. Yeah. Just a minute. Yeah.
So a corollary to that question would be, would you say that things are becoming, sort of going in a downward spiral and becoming less perfect, given all the happenings around the world that, we're all facing and hearing about? And if so, how does one restore that equilibrium to make it at least status quo in terms of the degree of imperfection versus perfection?
Sure. I think that these reformers which come in every generation are the ones who try to restore balance. Now, there are smaller reformers and greater reformers, and some reformers could be very specific, like reformers in the field of politics or sports or climate change and so on. So there are people, just as there are people trying to destroy the harmony or make it more bad, there are also people trying to make it good. Now, the two forces are not always equal. So sometimes one force is more powerful, and if those who are trying to destroy the harmony are more powerful, then we see kind of a downward trend. And then there comes a time when the reformers kind of get an upper ground, and then you find it going up, and then you find it going down, then you find it going up. So if you look at history, there's always been this alternating periods when things seem to improve and they went down again. They seem to improve and went down again. Now, when some extraordinary reformers come, their power lasts for a much longer period than the smaller reformers. And for instance, those whom we worship today as prophets, incarnation, we think about Jesus, Buddha. Now, Buddha lived almost 2,500 years ago. Jesus was 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago. Now, even after such a long time, their teachings, their life provides inspiration today. So those were really very powerful reformers. So the most that these reformers try to do is not that remove evil altogether. That's never happened. Even when the greatest of incarnations came, evil never really disappeared. What it did was more or less restored the balance. Now, is that enough? And I would think so. I think that this kind of a somewhat fragile balance between good and bad is actually the ideal environment to grow spiritually, an ideal enlightenment to be free in some ways, as opposed to the rather imbalanced situation in places that we see as heavens or hells. In heaven, well, there is just joy. The way we understand heaven is a place where everything is fine, everything is wonderful. When everything is wonderful, as I said before, when everything is wonderful, you don't even want to think of God. Well, why do you? You don't even need God then. So it's very easy to forget God when we are in heaven. In hell, if all the stories are true with fire and brimstone and burning and all of that, and so much pain and so much sorrow, you can't think of God in that situation either. So it's very difficult to think of God in either heaven or hell. It's easier to think of God here where we are now, where we have some amount of joy, but we cannot really enjoy it fully, because the moment we try to enjoy it, some blow comes and then we are sad again. But again, that sadness is not so bad that we are not able to think because again, it's pain. So we kind of go back and forth between joy and sorrow. And so this birth on this plane of existence is considered as a truly blessed birth in many ways from a spiritual standpoint. Sometimes it is said that even those people who have gone to heaven will have to come back to this plane of existence if they truly want to get out of this circle, the samsara. The only way to be free, it's only human beings who can be free because we have this kind of a more or less balance of joy and sorrow. That's the idea. So contentment therefore would be okay, let me put it this way. About contentment. All of us have both. We have some amount of contentment in our lives, and there are things we are not content about. Same is true about these great saints and sages. So then you say, well, what is the difference? The difference is only this. What is it that we are contented with, and what is it that we have a discontent about? Now, for many people, even religious people, they're often contented with their spiritual life because, oh, I meditate a little bit in the morning, I meditate in the evening, I pray daily, I'm very contented. And then, of course, there is a lot of discontent with the way the world is. Clearly, terrorism, corruption, well, I don't need to enumerate the list of problems. So there is a lot of things not to be happy about this world, but we can be kind of more or less happy about the way our spiritual life is going. So we have this kind of a contentment and discontent in our lives. In the life of a saint, it's just the opposite. They are contented with the way things are, not because they are perfect, because they know that there is a limit to how better things can be. That even if you feed a hungry person, you have solved a problem for the next 8 hours. After that, the person is going to be hungry again. So there is solution to every problem. No solution is a permanent solution. Just a minute. But a spiritual seeker is not content with his or her spiritual life. At no point should this spiritual seeker feel, oh, I do this meditation, I have peace of mind, I'm fine. We need to consciously cultivate what Swami Brahmananda calls in that book, Eternal Companion. We must cultivate divine discontent. In other words, no matter that we do our daily prayer and meditation, but a divine discontent would be to look in our heart and say, yes, I feel I'm a better person today than what I was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but I still have not realized God. I still have not become a Jivan Mukta. I still don't have the vision of God. And that's something that we cannot be happy about it. We read in the life of Ramakrishna, every evening as the sun was about to set, he would weep and cry and say, one more day has passed and I have not yet realized God. Now that was not a statement of contentment. But he didn't lose his sleep over, oh, they are not paying me enough for my job. I do this. He was a priest. He was employed as a priest in the temple. But that he didn't worry about, oh, when am I going to get my promotion, when I will be a head priest, so to speak. Now, this doesn't mean that one shouldn't have any ambition in life. All that I'm saying is we have to get our priorities right. It's good to work hard. It's good to make progress. It's good to advance in one's career. But also ask this question now and then. What are my priorities in life? Yeah, please.
No, Swami, I think you have explained it, so it's okay. I was just going to ask about the joy and sorrow.
Hold it close a little bit.
I was just going to ask about joy and sorrow, and you already explained it
answered
right
that.
now. Yeah, I was going to ask about the pain, like Sri Ramakrishna didn't feel or at least didn't express sometimes his pain, where he was able to. Um, I'm not sure if he was not having the pain or if he didn't express his pain when he was in pain,
Who?
or Sri Ramakrishna.
Uh-huh.
So, was it like a situation where you go beyond joy and sorrow? Like we read that we go beyond good and bad. And is that a situation where you aim for, or you just ignore, like we cannot do much, something like that?
Yeah, so when Sri Ramakrishna, for instance, towards his last illness, it was very painful. And when it was painful, he did say it was very painful. He was not pretending. He was always truthful. He could never tell a lie. So when he said it was painful, it was painful. But that had that capacity that at a moment's notice, he could withdraw his mind from the body and then go into samadhi. But when he kept his mind down at this physical plane, he said, out of love for the devotees in order to teach. And when he kept his mind on the body, when the body had pain, he did experience pain. So yes, that's why it is said, a life of an avatar is sometimes becomes difficult to understand, because there are times when they seem to be like all of us. Well, there is pain, they cry, they weep. And so we begin to wonder, well, they just looks like a human being. And then suddenly we find him just going into samadhi. And then we begin to, oh, no, this doesn't seem like a human being. So we always have this kind of going back and forth between, there is a divine presence, and the moment we think, oh, there is divine, then suddenly we see something human. And that's why an avatar is said to be one who lives on the threshold of the divine world and the human world. So we find characteristics of both the human and the divine in them. Any other thoughts or questions about what we have discussed, this verse? Yeah.
Maharaj, today you talk about a lot of forgiveness. So I have difficult to understand that. Maybe I couldn't understood you. That you said that it's easy. It's good that if you forgive your enemy, you're making their life miserable. It's just a expression, though. But if I cannot forget the situation, a mother, if standing and her child has been killed, she will not forget that pain. If that pain she cannot forget, how she will forgive? I understand not to take revenge. Revenge is not going to bring your child, but how you can forgive, how you can forgive if you can't forget. How do you express that in spiritual life? How I can develop that?
Well, it's clearly it's not easy. I mean, the specific example that you gave, it's difficult because our identification, our attachment, our emotions make it very difficult. Something that was so precious to us, so part of my own being, that has been snatched away from me and just seems in a very unfair way. And so that hurt, you can never philosophize with that hurt. But looking at it objectively, there's no one, at that moment, no one can go and tell a mother, now forgive. It's just not going to work. So that's not what, we are not really saying that that's the way someone should go and advise the mother at that moment. That's not going to work. But looking at that situation in an objective way, we have got to ask, what is next to be done? So here there is a child has been killed, and there is enormous grief and sorrow and anger. what next? That one who is gone, you're not going to get it back. What are the options? Should I live the rest of my life filled with anger and grief? Because that is not going to bring the child back anyway. That doesn't mean I have to rejoice, but I just have to say, what shall I do in order for me to understand what has happened, in order for me to see that which has happened to me, the pain that I have experienced, can I do something by which this event is not replicated? That I should not wish my fate upon somebody else. Can I do something that others don't suffer the way I have suffered? Because doing that will help remove this pain from my heart. And sometimes we see that, and that's, I think, a very constructive response to situations like this. There have been people, and there will always be, for instance, sometimes due to this gun violence, when some such tragedies occur, and just the other day, just didn't think, was it yesterday or today? In California, we heard this thing occurring today. So, yeah, and it's very sad. Every day we have to encounter these things. And sometimes we will see that sometimes the victim's family or the parents, sometimes, they have set up a fund or something. And suppose it's a death that has occurred through, say, an auto accident. So, say, the driver was drunk and was driving, and then they have some funds created in order to promote the awareness of how the harm that drunk driving can do, or the harm that gun violence can do. So doing something more constructive in that way, it not only helps to remove the pain from my heart, I'm also doing something to reduce the possibility of something similar happening to another parent. That seems to be a better response than just kind of burning with rage and anger, because you cannot sustain it for a lifetime, that kind of a thing.
I think my question is about content. If in many situations, if you are content, it is very difficult to make progress because there is no much motivation. We come across many of the situations, especially when you're dealing with your kids. So if the kid says, okay, I'm happy whatever I am, so they are not going to work hard and be better, we always feel that they have more potential like that.
Right. Yeah, good. And that's why I said that we have to understand this ideal of samadhana, contentment in a proper way. That this is not something that should take away any initiative from our heart. It's not about saying, I don't need to work hard, I'm just content with what I am, then it's not going to work. What it means is this, that I must carry out my duties and responsibility the best way I can. I must work hard, I must do my best. After doing my best, I have to be content with what life brings me. That's the way this contentment becomes a virtue. Contentment is not an excuse for laziness. It's not an excuse for not trying hard enough. Because if we don't try hard enough, sometime or the other in life, that regret is going to come in the heart. Sometime or the other in life, I'm going to feel, I shouldn't have wasted my time. I should have really tried hard. If we don't want that regret, we must do our best. We must work hard, do our best. Success is not always in our hand. Sometimes we speak about the American dream. It's interesting that you use the word dream, because the dreams are not always under our control. Sometimes we may work hard and yet there may not be success. Sometimes some people might apparently not be working hard at all, and we may find they are successful. Life doesn't seem to be fair. What is in our hands is to be truthful, to be honest, to work hard. Because there is such a thing as the joy that comes through just hard work, the joy that comes through a life of dharma, irrespective of whether it's successful or not. Sometimes I may work hard, I will be truthful, and yet the project may fail. And that will bring some pain. But at least deep down in the heart, I know I have not avoided my responsibility. I did the best I could. Because if I don't do that, there will be failure plus a regret. Oh, I should have tried better. But if you have tried your best, you cannot do better than your best at any time, if it's really your best. And so, only one who has truly tried their best and done their duties well, only to such a people contentment is possible. For other people who just use it as an excuse, they really cannot be content. They may show outside, oh, I'm very happy, but they cannot be really happy inside. That's the idea. Yeah. Any other? Okay. So when we meet next Wednesday, we will continue with this discussion on verse number 14. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhuhu. Bow down to Ramakrishna and Sharada Devi. This Sunday satsang at 11 o'clock, we have a guest speaker, Swami Brahmananda of our center from Washington, D.C. He will be here, and his subject will be inner sacrifice out of prayer. So you're all welcome for the satsang. Next Wednesday, we'll continue with the Gita study, and Tuesday and Saturday, our Arati and meditation will also continue as usual. So let's do the prayer on page 3. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.